This video is brought to you by Squarespace, the website builder with all the tools you need to create your own site to showcase and sell artwork. Hey guys, I'm here with Instagram famous Stephen Bauman.
Yeah.
We're gonna go to his studio, which is here at Mana, New Jersey, and he's gonna give us a little tour.
I'm talking about a lot of stuff, a lot of drawings, a lot of paintings.
If they want to see your stuff,
yeah.
What's your Instagram?
You can find me on Instagram at Stephen Bauman Artwork. Find me on Patreon, Stephen Bauman Artwork. If you type in Stephen Bauman Artwork anywhere, something about me should eventually come up.
And we just finished filming a full-on drawing, portrait drawing. Actually, do you want to give a little tease?
Yeah, this is the finished drawing of Isabel. We worked for maybe 18, 20 hours with her, and the full edited version of that will be out sometime on Proko.com.
It will be Proko.com/Bauman.
/Bauman, yeah.
Bauman.
Bauman?
Cool. Well, yeah, show us around.
All right, so we got finished work on the left, finished/unfinished work on the right, and then some maybe interesting projects back here.
This is awesome.
Yeah, well, why don't we start here? This drawing is probably about 35 by 35 inches. It's on a Canson Meton paper, which when I'm doing things that involve aqueous dispersions of ink or graphite, I really like Canson's Meton paper for that. It's hardy without being like kind of overly rigid or full of texture. There's probably 3 layers of inks that I washed onto the paper before I ever started the drawing. So you have kind of 2 layers of maybe a warmish mixture of like black and sepia ink. And this textured pattern here was me like using a spray bottle to kind of get effects to come out of it. And then over the top of that, there's a wash of sort of white ink that I used to kind of keep the values a little bit closer together because they were starting to get, for like a background, they were starting to get a bit too jarring, right? And that's all before like I started the process of drawing this, which is maybe 50, 60 hours into this drawing, maybe more.
Is it done?
No, I got a ways to go just in terms of, like when you look at like an area like this, for instance, right, and a drawing this big, if this head is maybe like, you know, a third or half life size or something, a passage of value that size could be really flat and uniform, and you wouldn't really pick up on it being monotonous, right? But when you really zoom that up, you know, I've really got to work on making these textures both uniform, but also like full of enough visual information to kind of keep them interesting, which is why I was creating texture in the background here. Is again, like on a much smaller drawing, you just kind of accept the background, you don't really look into it. At this size, inevitably, you have to look here. Yeah,
it's too big of a space to just have nothing.
Exactly. So part of the balance I'm trying to create, right, is like beautiful, harmonious form being rendered, you know, emotion coming out of the eyes, but also taking all these abstract elements and investing a lot more time and energy into them to kind of make them as interesting as I hope I can get them to be. But that's her. She's got a little ways to go.
I like it.
Oh, also, it's something that I talked a little bit about in the materials video, but you can actually see the evidence of me doing it here. Using a watercolor tape to adhere the drawing paper to a panel. Yeah. Right. And this way, I can put whatever amount of water that I want on this, and when that water evaporates and the paper dries, it'll go back to being drum tight and flat.
Right.
Whereas, you know, if you've like wet a paper that hasn't been like taped down properly, you're going to have a wobble forever.
Happens with sketchbooks.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
What is this for?
This is eventually, this is modern art. It's done. We're going to do our next video on a painting like this.
Stay tuned.
Proko.com.
2020.
Full on abstraction. No, this is actually, it's going to be a painting eventually. Like, it's
really?
I think it's.
I thought you really just did this as a background for the models. And that's the purpose of this canvas.
It works great for that though.
Yeah.
No, but eventually it's just, you have stuff around the studio. Like I always have a kind of big canvas hanging around. Like, you know, this I'll eventually stretch up, and like as part of a workflow, you know, for an oil painter, you start out the process long before you actually start the painting. Like, so I've got to wait for this kind of first coat to dry. So after I put that on, I set it aside. Some days you're in the studio and you're working and...
You have an hour or something, right?
I'm going to stretch up the canvas now.
Okay.
And then I'll have the canvas stretched up and I won't be totally ready. And then maybe I'll have another model in and I'll be thinking, oh, I'd love a white background instead of my dark wall. I'll put it up there.
Okay.
So it's a little bit of a kind of a transient studio prop that eventually will become a painting.
Okay.
Whenever I get around to it.
So how many paintings or drawings are you working on at the same time?
Depends on the time of year, but like...
the time of year where
right now I've got you need 5 to 7 kind of works going on at the same time. Just depends upon like, this model can come in at that time, or I've got time to work on this project now, or oil paintings become a little bit more procedural in that I like to schedule them a lot, because if I have maybe like 2 days in a row to paint, I'll use like a little bit of clove oil in my medium to kind of keep it wet for 2 days so I can be really effective in that time. But that means that I'm not working on the drawing that I could have been working on that extra day. Yeah. That's why the kind of staggering of work kind of comes about. My eyes are in several different places at once, and that's the way I'm able to be most effective. Which is like, the lesson is, there's not one size fits all. You just got to find the workflow that suits you. And for me, that was never going to be just working on one piece all the way to finish. Yeah, so I've got like stacks of drawings on my walls kind of constantly. Some of them are like this project. I was working with a guy and I kind of felt like I knew the personality that I wanted him to have in the picture. But like when you're doing like a portrait of someone, rather than like say like this is inevitably of course a portrait of somebody, but it's like these are just hired models. They're not people that I had in the studio for the sake of exactly who they are per se, right? Yeah. Whereas this guy is he's a photographer, he's another artist, he's a friend, and so really the portrait is very much about him as a person. And I kind of figured out the pose that I wanted doesn't actually show, in a sense, like who he is as a personality. So we worked on it for a day. We had a good like 6 hours to work, and some interesting things got resolved. But the fact is, like, I'm not going to continue that portrait because I know that this is a much more subdued version of this guy who's actually a lot more intense and a lot more engaged, right?
Can you turn that into just a portrait of some guy? Or is he too important? Is he just like a really good friend or someone really important that you can't just be like, just some dude, and do it just for the sake of an aesthetically appealing portrait?
Could do it. Good. If I had the enthusiasm to do it. That's really the question mark, is like, is your spirit kind of still in it? Okay. And that's, when people say, paint what you love, right? Draw what you love. There's so many levels to that advice though. It's not just like, I love, little owl figurines, so I'll just draw those. It's more about draw and paint what you're excited about, what you feel engaged with, what you feel passionate about, right? Yeah. And if you take that down to kind of a granular level, if you lose momentum on a drawing for like fundamental reasons, not like technical reasons, like I couldn't render the eye, but like, I don't believe in this anymore. This isn't the guy I was trying to capture. Yeah. That's when I feel like it's a real challenge to maintain working on it, to still kind of paint or draw what I love, right? Are there aesthetic things that I love? Yeah, I mean, I think some of the mark making and some of the design, I think I can still get really excited about, but it's highly unlikely that I'll return to that. This one, it started out just a picture of this model, Maisie. But I kind of decided in the moment, well, I'm just going to like block in the demo on the same page with her and kind of try and make a little bit of a movement or a composition out of it, right? So the idea of basically how do two kind of value shapes and two value situations, two portraits kind of fit together. I could just have randomly chosen to stick him anywhere, but I thought it was an interesting idea, the way that like the dark of her hair could kind of flow into a dark section of his hair, thus making a shape behind this sort of light silhouette, right? And then also when setting up the pose, like with two figures, it helps, if you're going to have either a connection or a kind of disconnection, like the direction of their eyes is an interesting way to do that. So these are two kind of, in a way, isolated people, which is kind of necessary if you're going to draw them totally separately. She was never there when he was there. He was never there when she was there, and so on. I like it when you have long sort of linear sections that will flow into each other, like the one you pointed out. And then also value-based composition where you have dark, light, dark, light. And I was doing actually this drawing at the same time. So I think in the morning I would work with in the model room with the students. So I'd start my figure drawing. I'd do a little demonstration. Basically, they start out as just demos. So this is what it looks like when you block in the body, top to bottom. Yeah. And then I'd go in the afternoon and do the same thing with like Maisie's head. But then I'd also get this period where, like, after I give them all their advice and tell them this is kind of the focus, this is the concept for today, then I have like this time where they need to actually work a bit before I can give them any advice on their individual work.
So you continue working.
Yeah, I'd sit down and I'd work on this. So I get like an hour, somewhere in there. Maybe even a little bit more depending upon how the workflow is going that day. Mm-hmm. So probably have 2 weeks, let's say maybe an hour and a half a day, 5 days a week on each of these heads. Okay. And then this guy is more like kind of 4 weeks, 5 days a week for about an hour a day. This is a drawing I made with my students in a class that I've called Visual Anatomy. The thesis or the focus of the class is that these forms that appear through kind of light and shadow are, of course, deeply affected by the subcutaneous anatomy, so the muscles and bones just below the skin. If you look underneath like all the modeling, there was kind of what I would call a full dissection. So we actually go through, after drawing the contour of the body, and actually outline all of the muscles and bony points like directly below the surface. You can still almost see like the outline of teres major and like infraspinatus and where the posterior section of the deltoid's kind of connecting to the scapula. Though a lot of it gets sort of washed away when I start rendering the form. You can see a little bit, vastus lateralis, rectus femoris. You can see some of these little outlines left over. But then eventually we turn that into kind of an impression of light and shadow that probably has a bit of a heightened sense of maybe rigid anatomy underneath it.
So I remember when we were talking, we discussed how big, like there's a totally big difference in focus on these two, right?
Yeah.
This you're focusing on showing every muscle, really heavy on the highlights, even just highlights, just to strengthen an edge. Make it even sharper. This one almost removing highlights in a lot of the torso and making it softer modeling. Do they start out the same, or do you just begin with a completely different focus in mind?
I think the second one, with each of these, like in any time I kind of begin a drawing, in order to be most efficient, I try and have a really clear picture of what the end point is, right? If I know the destination, I always feel like I can make better choices along the way to get there. Even if I'm not concerned about like getting there fast, but just getting there without like kind of going in a windy kind of path, right? So if I'm drawing on something that I know I'm going to key to the highlight, meaning like I'm going to push down all the halftones, I might start by toning the paper a little bit darker. So you see like the background value of this guy is much darker local value, knowing that I'm actually going to be filling in or leaving a lot more of the light shape filled in with halftone in order to show the highlight. Whereas here, right, I still toned the paper, but I toned it a lot lighter because I knew that like a lot of the halftones that would be leading up to the highlight, I wouldn't want to be doing that much erasing to kind of get them out, because the focus for this guy really was going to be about a softly modulated and fairly unified light shape. Yeah, it's a head study actually I'm currently working on, so I haven't. This one's probably got maybe.
I love how small it is on the big page. Like, do you always just put the full page on there and then you just start drawing, or do you plan out the size before?
The answer is like yes to all of that. Like sometimes I plan it out, sometimes I work on a smaller drawing board. This drawing is actually for my Patreon followers. So this is actually a bit of a filming thing.
It's so just
like,
so you
if you
have...
see it kind of marked out, like I just need to know like where the frame is going to be.
If it was just for yourself, you'd probably cut it.
I probably would have used a smaller paper.
Okay.
But I do also still love the idea of like, it's a big luxurious surface that you can kind of draw on.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes you, I don't know, it feels nice actually.
Yeah.
I think drawing on a big surface.
No, I totally see what you're doing a vertical on a horizontal.
Yeah.
Totally for video.
It's an orientation that I really like though, actually, I have to say. Like
vertical
if you look
on
at,
a horizontal.
like eventually like a lot of work, even this painting down here, it's a vertical composition on a horizontal.
These two. So this one has a lot of horizontal elements. She's looking diagonally. This is diagonal. There's a lot of horizontal or diagonal motion in this. This one is mostly vertical.
Yeah.
There's just, everything's kind of going up and down. Do you think this one would work just as well if you had added?
I think it actually would work better.
Really? Okay.
Well, here's the thing, right? Like, if you were teaching a composition course, you'd probably keep that vertical. You keep that in a way like kind of a portrait format.
Depends on the mood. If I wanted to make you feel awkward,
it depends on the mood. So like it is, I think, like a very kind of graceful pose as opposed it's about like, refinement and subtlety. And then actually to put that space to the left and right of it, I think would set you into a different mood coming into the work. Now, I think it works fine as it is. If I imagine that also like on a sort of horizontal format, I'd be very interested in those spaces to the sides as well. Just because it creates this negative area, right? In a way, it almost makes her seem more potent and more important in the middle of it by saying that there's a vacuum almost created out here.
Do you think the opposite works? A horizontal composition on a vertical format?
Probably not as much, no. Probably not as much.
Is it because we see more horizontally and so it's just a little more comfortable to do that?
I'm not sure. The horizontal format's like an interesting thing too, because if you think about like how everything is absorbed nowadays, movies, everything's formatted in that way. Like the kind of silver screen format is a very powerful thing, right? But we can talk about these guys in the
frames.
Actually, so disclaimer, this is an etching by one of my favorite artists. It is not mine. It's by a guy called Charles Weed. He was somebody that when I first came to the Florence Academy in 2004, he had already left the school years before that. But like a lot of his drawings still kind of hung around the studios, like people make great drawings in schools and then, the school will buy it for a student fee.
Or
you know what I mean? So you're like, thank God, I have like money to buy, a pint at the bar or whatever. So I really fell in love with like his student work initially, but then later got to meet him and visit him in Denmark and stuff. And that's an etching that he gave to Cornelia and I. But then the two drawings that are next to it are just are portraits that I've done. They're actually both Patreon portraits.
So they were recorded, the whole process?
Whole process, yeah. Did
you publish the recorded videos as one video? Are they a series of videos?
When I make a drawing, as you'll know from this demonstration, it's going to take me about 18 to 20 hours. Yeah, like all that's published out into like 4 separate videos.
Is the framing an important part of these pieces? Because it is different. Like I don't usually see a nice flat white like that with a round opening. Yeah. Usually you'll see like this.
Yeah, your standard kind of squared out frame. Or on drawings, a lot of times you'll see like a mat board or something put around it. I want drawings to kind of be able to live in the same way that paintings live, right? You get to have the painting, the frame announces that it's like something kind of precious, to have something ornate around it. And I kind of want drawings to have that same possibility, just without the idea of a mat board. I never really conceive of a drawing and think, that mat board's going to look great on my... No, it's completely the opposite of what I think, right? So with these, I actually worked with a framer, has a studio up in Yonkers, makes all this stuff by hand, and it's Korean Frame is the name of the website to go to. He's an artisan, like he's trained like in his craft, he's traveled the world, like working with different artisans and kind of finding out how they achieve the things they achieve. This is like a kind of like a slightly off-white, sort of lacquered gesso. I love the appearance of the white.
Yeah. No, it's all about the drawing because it blends in with the paper.
Exactly.
It's just like, this is it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's weirdly, it frames it better than a frame.
Yeah. Like so you have that, like we talked about the other day, like that black line around the frame winds up being the darkest thing in the whole composition. So your attention, of course, is like drawn out to the edge instead of right here in the center. And also like anytime, it's almost like a bullseye in a way when you think about like anytime you have a circle around something, and when you're making notes and you need to remember this one part, what do? Put a circle around it, right?
I put a check mark next to it.
I put circles around things. That's why there's a circle on this one. Speaking for like Florence Academy graduates and things, we have, of course, a section of the program that's all still life. So you wind up collecting all this stuff you've taken a lot of time and a lot of searching to get like just the right proportion of tiny dark vase to like go next to your sort of large pot full of whatever else. So it just winds up kind of being nice, like a nice studio situation.
So this is the nice shelf. This is where you put your things that you think look good.
And other things that are totally random.
So this one you have cut up into little pieces.
Yes. But actually only started out really as just a painting of her.
Oh, so you added all this later?
Yeah, like I didn't intend to ever kind of put wings on it.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I intended to in the painting, but then I thought, well, I should work on a design for those as well. So I kind of work out some of the issues about that. And then eventually when I finished it, I'd actually done so much work to it, I thought, well, I should at least frame it.
Have you ever done this kind of mat board where it's like it's just cut out around?
No, I don't think anybody else has that I've seen. Remember when I was going through like Art History 101 at college, and there was this sculpture that was made, it was a modernist work, but it was called like a coffin for an angel or something. A very softened human form, and then like cool. Wings that kind of came out. So you would imagine that if you opened that up, that it would be like an angel inside of it. So when I thought about, when I was making this, and I thought about that, I thought, well, none of the negative space around her is actually what I'm interested in. What if I can just encase that shape in a mat board?
Let's talk about this one?
Well, yeah, écorché. I teach a class, an écorché class, on Thursday evenings throughout the course of a 9-month period. In about 99 hours, we kind of build a 1/3 life-size figure from the inside out. And I'll have, some classes I'll have like 12 people, some I'll have 5 or whatever. but I asked them to like kind of make a little mascot or whatever for the tops of their sculptures.
So they can identify their sculpture?
Maybe, but it was just started just because we were, it's a very labor intensive thing. So you're in there like working like really concentratedly for a few hours. So hijinks inevitably ensue, right? So someone did it once and we thought that's a fantastic idea. So we should all do something on the top of our sculptures.
That's cool.
It's a nice distraction from the labor of like calculating rib distances and cutting away angle breaks across surfaces. You can even see like little Roman numerals, right? Counting out ribs, just so you kind of keep track of where you're at, like in terms of all the angles that you have to create. But yeah, so it's a really involved process, and eventually like you kind of get to experience a bit of like what being a sculptor is like, which I think is really cool, because you're kind of, when you're sculpting at the head, of course, like we start with, creating a block that represents the kind of planes of the head. Mm-hmm. So like things like using values to create form through planes becomes very real to you immediately when you start sculpting, right? Which is why like for 2D artists, like experiencing a 3D sculpting world is actually like, it has a great utility, right?
What are those drawings back there? What are those?
This is, listen, I saved this because it's the best thing that I have in my studio right now.
Oh, really? A butt? Of course it is.
Wait a minute. Let's get down here. Can we get down here? This is a drawing for Stanislav Proko.
We should have got you actually signing it and spelling my name wrong. We should have done that.
Erase it away.
Crap.
Do we want to do this now?
Okay, this your lighting in the studio is probably the best artificial light I've ever seen in the studio, because it mimics north light the best I've seen so far.
Basically, you have 4 LED panels, right? Each one is, I think, 2 foot by 4 foot, meaning that the entire surface of light that I have is about 4 foot by 8 foot, right? The reason that I wanted it to be that broad is so that I don't ever get really like a spotlight effect. If you're working on a canvas, like say the size of the one at the back end of my studio, and you have a light source that's maybe just one of those panels, what's going to happen is you're going to get light that's kind of weighted. Like if you put the canvas right in front of it, you'll get great light in the middle, and at the far edges, you'll get these sort of dark corners. So what I wanted is just something larger than just about anything that I'll ever work on in here. Just so that I can ensure that I was able to keep all of the surface of my canvas or paper into kind of the middle section of the light source, right?
Yeah, more evenly lit. It also adds a lot more bounce light that evens it out even more.
Exactly. And the other thing too that you'll notice, like looking at this one, if you've ever worked on models like with like a halogen spotlight, here, stand here, you're a model. If you look at the shadow edges, like the cast shadow on his neck, right? It's a really, really soft edge. Now, if you worked in studios with models where you have like a halogen spotlight or something, you notice these edges are like crystal clear, super sharp.
Yeah.
And it's actually like really unflattering. So if you're a professional portrait painter, you don't want like these raccoon eye sort of shadow shapes that are really harsh. If you want a harsh portrait, Stan Prokopenko. No, of course you don't. You don't want those.
No, I don't.
So the large light source and bounce light that you mentioned is another way that you get enough ambient light into the edges of the shadows that it appears like nice and soft and flattering. This is my workbench. This is where the undifferentiated ephemera of studio life collects. I've got my original Mario Robinson watercolor painting, and I've got some of my old watercolor paintings hanging around. There's a copy of Velázquez that a student gave to me, and this is one of the Florentine instructors, Daniela Astone. Yeah.
What else is left in your studio? There's this giant piece up here.
Up here. Should we get it down?
We have talked about it quite a bit off camera.
We got to get it down.
You're going to take it down?
Yeah, I'm going to take it down.
Okay.
You got it?
Yeah, I got it.
All right, let's bring it down. Yeah.
No, actually, the hands look way better than they're up there. They looked a lot smoother, much more polished when they're up there because they're so far away. But now seeing the little textures you've created, they look like little sculptures. I love it. Nice.
This is a drawing I worked on for maybe 6 months. Honestly, I say 6 months. I didn't count, but I know it was in my studio for ages and ages. I did it when I was in Sweden. It's actually a combination of 2 different people. Johannes.
Well, I mean, 2 people here.
Well, these are both the same guy. But Johannes, right, actually has a very hairy chest.
Okay. So this guy.
Yeah.
has a hairy chest. And then that's...
The anatomy model that I was using at the time, like for my anatomy classes, was a bit more like built up, but also almost completely hairless. So I had him in like for a lot of like the rib cage torso work. And then the rest is Johannes. But I just like as focal as this is, I just couldn't have like a big hairy chest.
You're not like me.
Are you a hairy guy?
No.
Okay. Point being, the non-hairiness of this is not a product of Johannes not being hairy.
Okay, that's a very important point to me.
That's what everybody needs to know about this artwork.
This is why you created this piece?
But this is, I think there's some really, for me, really nice, successful moments of modeling, certainly like in here. But this is something I worked over and over and over again. I think I was talking about during one of the days of the demo, like how a lot of the rough hatching that I used to do, it can be turned into really fine modeling. And this is an example of that, right? The whole thing really looked like this. Rough hatching everywhere. But then it's just layer after layer of manipulation. So rolling my eraser over areas. This drawing is probably the place where I really started just erasing broad planes of value in an effort to kind of create maybe a more rigid sense of form. But then there's things like this that almost become, I have to say, like almost unexplained. There's not necessarily a technique that got there. It's just me beating the paper and the form into submission until I came up with a solution that turned the right way.
Yeah.
Because again, also at this size, this is not like making a little pencil sketch of a deltoid. This is like, how does rippling, turning form look life size in graphite?
Yeah.
So it's an incredible challenge. And for that, I'm incredibly pleased to, with having gone through this experience. And there's also like a lot of like sort of washes of graphite. If you look at some of like some of the mark making, like in this area is really, really apparent, right?
Yeah, this obvious
so like
water
dripping
brush.
And washes and then all of the background really is made in that way.
This is brush as well? Or did you like use like rags and stuff?
Brushes, yeah, mostly brushes, yeah. And then there's various different parts of erasures and things that I've done. So, I'd have big like handfuls of like kneaded eraser and I'd be like,
oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, if it's that size, you have to like upsize everything that you're working with. And again, just to get a coherent result out of it was a lot of work, especially because I just didn't know where it was going to end up. I was just kind of taking my best guess and seeing what would happen. Like at a certain point, all of this was way lighter and the clouds actually had a lot more shapes to them. But eventually it was just too distracting, constantly too distracting. So I went to like a darker background, light at the horizon, and then I wanted to kind of activate that. So I started making these kind of raindrop kind of effects.
Yeah. I didn't even see it up there.
Yeah, again, it becomes a little bit more dramatic when you kind of take it out into the light and there's all these little different effects coming on. In fact, I haven't talked to anybody about this piece in like, I don't even know how long. But it's just interesting revisiting it. Like I haven't thought about these shapes and these transitions and things in ages. And so, it's like, some things you look at and you go, God, that was so intelligent of me. And other things
You're
you go,
brilliant.
Like, and then other things where you go like, oh God, Stephen, why didn't you see that coming? But like, again, seeing some of the modeling and the rendering like of shapes in here, I'm just go, wow, it's so creative.
Jesus Christ.
And then, no, but all right, let's be fair. Yeah. And balanced, I look here and I go, oh, Steve, why didn't you see like, that obviously should have like turned a lot more softly. And if you'd have done that, your life would have been so much easier.
What's the future of this piece? What are you going to do with it?
What is the future? I'm going to put it back up over my
head. It's going to just stay there.
Probably. I just, it's one of those things, I have a blind spot for it. Like I made it and I think it's nice. But I just don't, I don't often show like much older works. They just kind of wind up hanging around the studio, especially because I'm not like pouring my attention into them. Like the head that's behind you, that needs a lot more work. That needs framing. That needs to be shown to people. That stuff has to happen with it. This has already kind of gone through that cycle and I still have it. So it just kind of gets relegated a bit into that.
So what's the meaning of this? Like you have on his other face here, a different expression. Mm-hmm. You have a key floating.
Yeah.
You got this pose.
Yeah.
Where he's falling asleep.
There you go.
So what is he starting to dream? Is this his? Oh really? Yeah. Am I getting this right?
Yeah.
So
you're exactly bang on to what it is.
Okay,
right?
So he's dreaming, but okay, the key
Yeah.
Is the dream world is like at the
key's
door
a little
to
bit
something?
the question mark, right? So is it drifting out of his hand, or is his hand kind of reaching for it, right?
But what does the key represent?
Solutions, ideas, thoughts, inspirations, right? So it's just about like trying to create a division between these two worlds, right? But also talking about another world while witnessing this one. So you have someone. I should mention, like in this piece, it didn't actually start out completely in this shape. There was actually a bed sheet covering the lower half of his torso and a pillow behind his head. That was like my initial conception. I just wanted to draw someone sleeping. And when I go to sleep, I always put my hands up like that, like
you
a baby
still do
does.
that?
Oh, well, maybe when I'm very tired, I do it. Usually when I sleep, I put my hands here. But the point is like that it was a pose that in some rhetorical way suggested slumber or sleep, right? But then I realized I just wasn't comfortable with the whole kind of looking at a person in bed below you like that. It's just weird. I just was really weirded out by the whole idea. So I kind of changed it from being like on a flat surface to being in front of this sort of stormy depth, which also kind of works with the sleep metaphor.
It also takes him out of reality a little more, and almost like we are entering the dream world.
Yeah.
Now, if it was on a bed, it was like, no, we're still in this lucid state.
Yeah. So then, as his eyes are closing, this guy's eyes are opening. This disembodied head, this like spirit version in a way of him. While I also recognize that sometimes when you unpack these things and explain them, it can rob a little bit the mystery from the piece. But I'm actually really happy to hear that when you were looking at it and taking a guess, you guessed bang on like kind of what was supposed to be happening.
Is this where you do your Patreon?
Right here.
Right here in this chair?
Little areas
you got this giant microphone arm.
If I'm ever doing like audio stuff, I do a lot of online teaching. So like I'll be recording videos of me like correcting someone's drawing on Procreate, but I'll also be like talking while I'm doing it so that the experience is they get to see the activity taking place of me fixing drawings. And then I'm also kind of lecturing about what I'm doing. So it's kind of explained what's happening. Then I'll take those recorded videos and I'll send that to them as part of that month's like teaching experience. That part of it happens not on this table.
No, not here. This part in that chair.
Yeah, I get my iPad out and I start drawing and stuff and recording on this just so the sound is a little bit better. But also I'm kind of putting together video and kind of podcast audio work, which was the other reason for buying this one. It's just so that you get a sound quality that's above a certain threshold.
Yeah, not iPhone.
Not like an iPhone on the other side of the room.
Right.
I'm shouting through a megaphone. But that's where that happens. And I'll have somebody in and we'll chit chat on either side of the mic.
Well, thank you so much.
Stan.
Great studio.
Thank you, buddy.
It's got a good feel to it.
I like the vibe in here.
It feels like you can be very productive in here.
I get very productive.
I don't hear anything coming from the outside. It's like you're in this container.
Yeah.
Feels good. Good light.
Yeah.
Nice.
Excellent.
All right. Well, if you guys want to check out more of Steven's stuff.
I was going to do the smash cut right there.
See ya. No, really. There's the demo.
Yeah.
So go check that out. And then there's this Patreon. Mm-hmm. Go check that out.
Stephen Bauman artwork. Stephen Bauman artwork.
On Patreon. We'll have all the links in the description and stuff. But yeah, the demo, the Patreon, the Instagram.
Yes.
That's pretty much it, right?
That's all.
See you guys. Stephen Bauman has an incredible art studio, but he also has a website to show off his work. If you haven't built an online art site yet, maybe you should check out Squarespace. Their web builder is easy to use and makes customizing your site a breeze. On top of that, 24/7 tech support is available with all plans. So if you run into any problems, you won't be left high and dry to figure out how to solve them. Start building your dream website today by going to squarespace.com for a free trial. And if you're impressed with what they have to offer, you can save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain by using this link, squarespace.com/Proko.